Okay, hello, and welcome to this hangout from the Couchbase team, where we're going to be talking about Couchbase Server 4.5 and the developer preview release that we've had recently, with a beta coming up soonish. And there's a whole bunch of Couchbases on with us today. So I'm Matthew Revell, and I'm in the UK. Then we've got Laurent Doguin over in Paris. Hello, Laurent. So Laurent will be kind of hosting with me today, and we'll be joined as well by Dom Pinto over in Toronto,
Hey guys.
Marty Schoch in America, Alexandria, I think, in
Washington
the
DC
East.
is close enough.
That'll do, and then Simon in Paris and Dave in Manchester. So yeah, hi. Okay, so I think we should start off with a quick rundown of what's new in Couchbase Server 4.5. So, Don, why don't you, you've been the release manager, so why don't you take us through some of what's new?
Sure. So thanks Matthew. So we've added a lot of exciting, really cool stuff in 4.5 developer preview. So I want to give you, we can talk about every single feature today because there's a ton of cool, exciting work. But I want to point you to a landing page that is going to give you, give you a one-liner for each description of each feature. So again, we won't go over each of them, but let me tell you about the top, I would say areas which we have kind of made significant investments. So the first one is querying. So we want to provide more efficient querying. We have, a couple of features there. We do have a couple of features for more advanced data access, and you will definitely see a demo today, or you can look at the website for more information. There's more powerful indexing with indexed arrays and memory optimized indexes, and again, a couple of more administration features. So let me tell you a little bit of my favorites out of all of these. The first one is the integrated query workbench. So this is the Couchbase admin console, and you'll notice that we added a new query tab here inside the admin console. Previously, we used to this was a standalone tool that you were able to which you could tie into Couchbase, but now it's all integrated to give you the great experience within the admin console, and you can really write and run some queries. So here you see that this also provides a bunch of history queries that you've run, and I'm going to just run, for example, a travel sample. Just select star for travel sample bucket, and you can see the results. The other exciting feature I'd like to talk about is query monitoring and profiling. So for every query you run, there is also a bunch of system catalogs that we've added. So for example, one of them is on this one. Here you see that we do show completed requests. Like in this case, I just loaded a bunch of the sample buckets, so it automatically created indexes, and you can see the results in the completed requests. Similarly, we do have active requests as well as catalogs for prepared statements. So please check that out. And finally, one more last feature that I want to talk about is we did add a security tab here again on the top in the admin console, and one important feature that we pushed in DP is the ability to use, in addition to self-signed certificates, to be able to use X509 certificates for client-server encryption. So I highly recommend you guys to check these new features out and have fun with DP.
Great, thanks, Don. So hang on, I was just copying down your certificate there. Don't stop sharing your screen. But yeah, thanks for that. That's cool. Okay, so there's plenty there, but I'd say we're going to focus on two other features for the rest of the Hangout, and that is the free text search or full text search. I'm not sure which one it is, so we'll get that from Marty, and then the subdocument API, which lets you query and mutate parts of a document instead of the entire thing every time. So first off, Laurent, do you want to kick off a bit about the free text things that are in Couchbase now?
Yeah, well, quickly go about full text. When you talk to full text about people in 2015, 2016, they usually think about this cool thing called Elastic, and they tend to associate that with something else called Kibana, and that's not the full scope of full text. Full text is more than just terms and facets. There's way more stuff to it, and Marty will lead the project here at Couchbase. You started Levy, which is a full text index engine in Go, and Couchbase full text server is the integration of Levy to Couchbase. So can you tell us more about that and about full text in general?
Sure. Thanks, Laurent. As you just said, we started an open source Go project to do full text search, and that's called Blovy. And then on top of that, we're building into Couchbase Server the full text search capability. So that's the ability to define a full text index on the documents that you store in Couchbase, and then a corresponding search capability, which lets you run full text queries against those indexes. Probably the easiest thing to do is just dive right into a demo. So let me go ahead and share the screen. And now you should be able to see console. This is the developer preview that we're talking about today. I've got it installed on my system, and I have the beer sample dataset loaded. And we see that here, beer sample. It's got 7,303 documents. And the nice thing about beer sample is it has some nice textual descriptions that we can search through. So the first thing I want to emphasize is just how easy it is to get started. If I click over to the Indexes tab, you'll notice there are now 3 subsections. That's one other change in this Couchbase version of Couchbase. We're going to focus on the full text tab today. And here we see we don't have any indexes defined yet. So I'm going to go ahead and just press the button to create a new full text index. You have to give it a name. So I'm going to say beer search. Then I'm going to choose the beer sample bucket. And I'm not going to configure anything else. And just press create index. And you'll see it's that easy. So if you want to get started, first playing around with just seeing what kinds of search you can do, it's very easy to get started. I'm going to refresh the count here. Then you notice that's loading. While it's loading, I'll show you one other thing. If I click back to the Data Buckets tab and go into Beer Sample, you'll notice there's a new section that showed up dynamically based on the fact that we just created a full-text search index. So if I expand that section, we'll see some stats. Now, these are not the final stats. That's something we're still working on. But one nice one that we can see right now is the number of items in the index. So we can tell that's closing in on completing indexing the whole thing. And so now we know that index is complete. Let's go ahead back to the indexes section, back to full text, and we'll run our first search. So I'm going to choose the index, beer search, and I don't know, let's search for, I don't know, water, just as a simple term that we know is going to appear in the descriptions. And the thing you'll notice right away is, wait a minute, we're only seeing document IDs and not the actual snippets or highlighting from the source document. This is provided as sort of a default behavior because a lot of times when you're building applications, you're going to have access to the full document anyway, and you're going to want to show that to the user, and so you only need the document IDs. But sometimes you do want additional data to be displayed. So let me go ahead and show you how you would do a slight modification on that and include the document, the portion of the content that actually matched. So I'm going to create another index, and let's just call this, I don't know, beer search 2, and I'm going to choose the bucket again, beer sample. And what I'm going to do is in this type mapping section, I'm going to essentially describe the JSON structure. So I'm going to say insert child field, and we know there's a field name called description inside of the JSON. And I'm going to just make one other change. I'm going to select the box to say store. And that's going to tell it to, in addition to indexing that field, also store a copy of the field, which is going to allow us to do the highlighting that you'd expect. We're going to go ahead and create that index and get that loaded. So that's underway. And again, we can monitor the progress as that's building from, again, another dynamic section just added here. This is for the beer search 2 index. And we can see that's going up and progressing nicely. Now, we don't have to wait for it to finish, of course. We can search anyway just to sort of see the differences. If I go back to full text, this time I'm going to choose beer search 2. And we'll just, in this case, just run the same search. We say water. Now you'll see maybe more what you're expecting to see. We're seeing within the description of the particular document the term that we search for and the highlighting going on. Now, full text search has a lot of capabilities. One of the things you typically think of is the ability for it to have matches, like inexact matching. So I'm going to go ahead and create a third index with one slight variation to that. This one, I don't know, let's just call it beer search 3 for simplicity. And I'm going to do, in addition to what we did last time, I'm going to essentially repeat that. Description, and we're going to say store. I'm going to add another field. which is the alcohol by volume field. Now that's a number, so I'm going to select number, and I'm also going to have it store it just so we can see the values and understand what's going on. And I'm going to make one final change, which is I'm going to make the default analyzer for the whole index EN, which is the language code for English. And that's going to have the effect of making essentially assuming all the text is English and performing the appropriate stemming. So let's hit create index, get that kicked off. Again, that's building right now. You can sort of quickly pass the time and see the progress there. Again, we won't wait for it to finish. We're going to go ahead back to indexes, full text search. And this time I'm going to search for something that I know has some inexact matches. So in this case, I'm going to say peaches, maybe if you like fruity beers or lambics. You notice now when we search for peaches, we're getting matches on peach and on peaches. And that's because the stemming that's going on for English is going to essentially stem those down to the same term in the index. That's pretty much what I have. I'll just show you one more feature. I mentioned the alcohol by volume field that we added. So let's do one other search that I tried earlier, Budweiser. And that matches 6 results. But we also have the alcohol by volume here, 5, 4.3, 5, 5, and 4.2. So let's add something that's going to check on that. So now I'm going to change the query to a little bit more complex query. I'm going to say plus Budweiser, which means it must have the term Budweiser. And we also want it to have alcohol by volume greater than 5. And when we do that, we see it trimmed it down. Now we're only getting the one result where the alcohol by volume field was greater than 5, and it contained the term Budweiser. So that's a quick overview showing some of the capabilities that you get with the full text search that we've added in Couchbase 4.5. I'll just point out one other thing. The developer preview, as we said, is out, and you can play around with it. There is a section in the documentation describing how to use full text and going through some getting started tutorials to sort of get you going. And of course, as always with Couchbase, if you have questions, go to the forums. And there's a section called CBFT, which is just for the full text, and you can ask your questions there, and we'll try and work with you. So, in one other final thing I'll highlight, we are restricted to a single node for full text in the developer preview. That's something that I'm excited to say is changing. So when the beta comes out, that's going to support multiple nodes. So definitely check out the developer preview now, and if you're interested, stay on top of it. Check out the beta when that comes out as well.
Right. So that was a follow-up question I had for you, Marty. Is what do you plan after the 4.5? Is there any roadmap already?
So beyond 4.5, I would say there's some performance enhancements that we'd like to work on. That's an area where a lot of people have interest. We have additional types of queries that we want to support. So right now we've focused on the sort of most common types of queries, but there's a lot of capabilities we could add there as well. Yeah, those are the ones I'd highlight for now.
Thanks. So I'm guessing everything is supported by also our SDKs.
So as of the developer preview, we have experimental support in the Java SDK, and Simon has written a blog about that. So if you're interested in playing around with it from the SDK perspective, check out his blog post. And additional support for the other SDKs will be rolling out as we proceed through the release cycle.
Cool. Thanks, Marty.
Yeah, thanks very much. Anybody else got any questions for Marty on that? I have one. Is it possible to programmatically create the indexes, or do you always have to go through the web interface?
So as with most of Couchbase, there's a REST API which powers the user interface, so you're never forced to just use the UI. There is at least a REST API available. And we do have plans to eventually support that through the SDK as well. That's a little bit more complicated, and so it'll sort of roll out in iterations. I would say in first versions, you may not see any capability in the SDK to create an index. Then what will happen is you'll see a phase where you can create it programmatically, but it's just sort of a, pass this JSON blob describing the index and create it or not, right? So that's sort of makes it possible to use the SDK to do it, but it's still not really very expressive in terms of using the SDK to actually describe the index. And then I would say longer term, we'll keep increasing those capabilities so that more of the fine-grained control can be done through the SDK.
Cool. And I know it might seem obvious to perhaps people who, if we've been working on it closely and so on, but one question I think that might be interesting to talk about is when would you use full text search over nickel or a view even? You know, what's the use case here?
Sure. There's a lot of overlap between a lot of these technologies, and so that's sort of the challenge for us, is to make that more seamless to the end user, because ultimately the user should focus on what they're trying to build, not necessarily how. But that's something that's going to evolve over time. So right now, for example, nickel might have a wildcard match that you do on a string that could get you something that looks a little bit like search, or you could use full text and maybe go at that directly from a different perspective. So that's an example of one feature you might be able to build two different ways, and experimenting there. You also saw I did the numeric range query as sort of composed with the full text search. That's something that you might use our secondary indexes for in another type of query. So there is a lot of overlap. You do have different choices. I would say for right now, most of the users that are going to choose full text are ones that have a search first capability, right? So meaning that the primary thing you're building is search, and then you might have additional requirements like, oh, I also would like to filter on alcohol by volume, right? So that's why you would use that in that particular case. If you were just building a way to navigate Couchbase documents by alcohol by volume, you would not start with full text necessarily in that particular case. And I think over time that's going to get more clear as we sort of bring all these things together. We see a future where you're going to be able to write a nickel query, which might tap into the secondary indexes. It's going to tap into the geospatial views, and it's going to tap into full text, and all of that's eventually going to come. Now that's obviously down the road, but that's some exciting stuff for us to look forward to.
Cool, great. Yeah, it does sound really good. So thanks, Marty. So kind of sticking with the query side of things, another new big feature in 4.5 has been the subdocument API. Dave, you've been involved in that from pretty much the beginning, so can you give us an idea of what it's about?
Yeah, sure, Matthew. Okay, so hi guys. So subdoc API, or subdocument API, to give it a proper title. So one thing we've kind of noticed with Couchbase, Couchbase has kind of evolved in its functionality. We started as a key value store, we moved to a document database, we added more search, so forth. And you've kind of always been able to put anything you like in those documents, but people, there's a lot more functionality if you put JSON in your documents. And JSON's kind of become a pretty much de facto document interchange for a lot of sort of web applications. It's quite nice to kind of keep a bunch of information together in a single document. And so your documents might get quite large. And one of the limitations that we've had so far is that if you want to do anything about documents, if you want to read some information out of it, or if you want to change part of it, you have to basically get the whole thing from the server. And some of the SDKs kind of wrap this up in quite a nice way for you. They make it look like you can just change a single field, but from a if you get down to the nuts and bolts, over the wire from the server, we're sending some data over a network socket, applications grabbing the whole thing, changing whichever bit it wants to change, and sending it back again. And this works pretty well if your documents are quite small. And by quite small, obviously your mileage may vary, but 1 or 2K, maybe single-digit K or so. But people are starting to put big things into documents because it's quite nice to have this big thing together. And one of the nice things about JSON is you don't have to decide your schema up front. So what happens is people add more and more stuff. That's kind of what happens. It's easy to add more stuff. So one of the, we kind of realized this sometimes works quite well. Usually Couchbase is actually pretty fast at getting the thing, but you can get to a point whereby just moving those bytes over the network starts to take some time. So this basically was the idea for the subdoc API. And so what we do is we say, okay, well, you've got some big document and you want to know what the surname is. So instead of us sending the whole thing and then going, oh, great, the surname is Revell or whatever, we can say, well, actually, I want to do a subdoc request for the path, the surname, so name.surname, for example. And only that bit, so we'll send the request over the network, which is, the document key, but it's now also give me the surname as well as this particular key. And then what comes back is just that tiny little fragment. And by the same principle, if you want to change something in the document, so say you want to, I don't know, change someone's zip code or their postcode. That's probably a bad example because you probably change your whole address, but let's run with it. So instead of having to grab the whole thing, make that change yourself and send it all back again, we can just say to the server, replace zip code with whatever 90210. So this is something that we've been working on for a bit. We've got it in the server, and for the developer preview, people can start playing with it. And we've got a few SDK supports ready. So the C Couchbase API, Java, which someone just about to talk about, and I think Python is also, if it's not already there, it's very imminent in the experimental. So that's kind of a high level overview. I've spoken enough. I'll let Simon actually show you what this looks like in the code, which is generally much more interesting. So, Simon, do you want to give us a demo of this?
Yeah. Sure. Thank you, Dave. So yeah, I'll present SubDoc from the Java SDK perspective, but as with all the SDKs, we try to come up with an API that is common enough for you to not be lost when you switch from one language to the other. So this should apply to other SDKs as well. But keep in mind, this is still experimental, so the API could still change. Let me share my screen. Nope. I will share just IntelliJ, or the entire screen works well. Okay. So yeah, I guess you can see my screen.
Yep.
So this is the Couchbase console. I've prepared a document. So a subdocument only works on already pre-existing JSON documents. So I have a JSON document here with sub-dictionaries with Boolean values inside. And yeah, imagine that this is a huge array of data, and the main reason you don't want to transmit the whole document when you want to read only a small part of it or mutate a small part of it. So we also have a counter here and an array of fruits. So let's work with that, shall we? So I have here a Java application that I've prepared. It has all the usual connecting to the cluster, opening a bucket and stuff. But more importantly, it will allow me to demo the API. First thing I do is I use the classical get API key value operation to display what's the current global content for the document. So if I run that, I see that I have exactly the same thing as in the Couchbase console. But now with SubDoc, I can do something else. I can do result also. So the first operation that you can do with SubDoc is lookup. The first category is lookup operations. So you can use the lookup in operator, provide a key, and what you get is actually a builder. And this builder will offer you several operations, which are sub-document operations. So you can do, as a lookup, you can do a get, which will get a value inside a path, inside the document, or check for existence. For instance, let's try to get the fruits array. So I can simply do a get and say my path is fruits. This is the path inside the document, and this is the same syntax as a nickel path. And then I execute this instruction by using do lookup. And I just print that out to the console. Right? Okay, so now execute. What do I get? Oh, so I get what's called for now a document fragment. We see that we look up inside demo subdoc key. We also get the current CAS, a mutation token, which is something like the CAS, but it's not important. And we see that we performed a subdoc get on the fruits path, and the value that we retrieved was this array. So apple, banana, ananas. Ananas is the English word for French word for pineapple. More on that later. Of course, you can. So the result allows you to get individual contents. So you can get content 0 directly, and it will only output the array. Right. Here you go. But you're not limited to only one operation. You can do several operations. So what if, and the paths as well can be very powerful. So what if I want only the third item in the fruits array? So I know that fruits is an array. I can use this syntax to access elements in the array. And now, if I just remove that. Now, when I run this this piece of code, I see that the fragment now contains 2 values. So get fruits, which contains the whole array, and get fruits of 2, which contains only the string ananas. So that's lookup. And keep in mind, we only transmitted these small parts of the document when doing that. We didn't transmit back and forth the huge array of junk. We saved a lot of bandwidth doing that with a huge document. And you can also do mutations. So mutations have their own builders. Once again, bucket.mutateIn this time. You provide a key, and then you have various operations. So insert, pushback, remove, replace. So let's try it. I mentioned that we had a French word in our array of fruits, so why not replace it? So we'll do a replace on the fruit, and we provide exactly which index in the array we want to replace. We'll say we want to replace that with pineapple. And maybe we want to insert some new value. So new value inserted. And since we don't have a new dictionary in a new entry in our root document, we can provide, we can use the create parent flag that will create intermediate path. Okay, so if we do mutate, and then we'll output the document in its entirety for a second time. Let's see what it does. Okay, so here we have the document in its initial state, and here we have the new state of the document. So if we look at fruits, we see apple, banana, pineapple. So we managed to replace that. And we see that we created a new entry here, which is also a dictionary with a single value entry inserted. So that matches what we wanted to do. So yeah, you have also operations that work on arrays, or if you want to remove that large glob of data, that large array, you can just do remove of the junk entry. And if we run it, yeah, the junk here is gone. So that could come in handy.
Great, thanks a lot, Simon.
Yeah.
Hey, can you show us how it failed? Because I'm expecting if I use that with arrays, I will probably go out of bound. So.
Oh yeah. So if I maybe do see a replace of fruits, if you go out of bound 5. Oh, yeah. So a mutation specification like that is atomic. So subdoc works on a single document, the key, and if one of the operations that you describe cannot be executed, then all of them, none of them gets applied. So what you get instead is a multi-mutation exception, and it says that the first operation that failed was the third one. Well, it's zero indexed, so it's actually the replace. And the status was a code saying, okay, this path doesn't exist, basically. On the other end, if you do that on multi-lookup, on a lookup like that, it can partially fail. So path that exists, you will be able to get a value for them, but the other path, if you attempt to call the content method to get the specific value for this path, you will get an exception. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. And one last thing, since with mutation we have optimistic locking, you can provide a CAS as well here. Once in the builder, you can call with CAS, and it will apply. It will do the CAS check for the whole document, for the whole operation. So you can do optimistic locking and things like persistence, durability constraints, persist to 4 and replicate to only one replica, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's about it for subdoc in Java.
Great, thanks a lot, Simon, and Dave also. Okay, so I think we're kind of coming to the end now. Don, can you tell us where to find Couchbase Server 4.5 DP? Can't hear you, sorry, Don. Don, we can't hear you.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? So
yes, hi. Yeah.
I just wanted to share my screen once again here. So this is the link for where you can find all the resources. You go to downloads page, you can download the DP bits. There's also the developer portal you can check out. There's forums. So if you go to you'll be able to download the DP. But there's also the DP page, which is you could go to couchbase.com and get a link directly to the DP page. It is couchbase.com/4-5-DP.
Okay, superb.
It's also available on Docker for those Docker-centric people, which I am sometimes.
Cool.
Thanks for mentioning that, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Marty, Dave, Simon, and Don, and also you, Laurent, as well. And thanks everyone who's watching this either live or by video. So couchbase.com is where you can find out more. And as Marty mentioned earlier, forums.couchbase.com is a great place to go if you want some help with the DP. So thanks a lot, and see you later on another Hangout.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.